It is almost time to throw up a big orange X for Cowboy wide receiver Dez Bryant being named to the 2026 Hall of Fame ballot alongside a former coach, Larry Coker, but he wasn't the head man. Mike Gundy is the head man that is likely headed to the Hall of Fame, or is he already in the Hall of Fame just playing with house money?
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms, visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at AllDayoState. Today, we're brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment matter more, especially right now when new customers can get $200 back in bonus bets when your first $5 bet is a winner. Head on over to FanDuel.com to get squared away today. Meanwhile, we get squared away in the conversation of Dez Bryant being named the 2026 Hall of Fame ballot. Obviously, I think this is a very big deal for Oklahoma State. We do have a decent number of players that have been inducted into the Hall of Fame, but you could always use some more. And what people do not remember about Dez Bryant is that he had his biggest year stripped away from him because he went out to dinner with Deion Sanders. Nothing nefarious, nothing against any rules that apply today. But remarkably, the NCAA found ways to target universities, as they always have, and they always will. Oklahoma State's one of those targetable universities. So, of course, they took Dez Bryant's biggest season away from him. And what him and Brandon Pettigrew and Kendall Hunter and Zach Robinson could have ended up being, we will never know because Dez Bryant got screwed over. So this could be a way for the game of college football to kind of make it up to him to some degree. He was an All-American, all Big 12 selection, probably would have been up for the Blitnikoff Award another season and easily could have won it if he had not been suspended by the NCAA for going out to eat with Deion. But outside of it, Dez Bryant, I did find it pretty interesting that there were some coaches that were up for this as well. One of those being Larry Coker. Larry Coker is a former Cowboy coach. He was an offensive coordinator at Oklahoma State in the late 80s. So, those days of Thurman Thomas and Barry Sanders and even Mike Gundy, running around as a quarterback, all of those were because Larry Coker was the one calling plays. And, of course, he goes on to have a remarkable career, and he goes on to win a national title at Miami. So I think it would be pretty cool to see Larry Coker get in here. But at the end of the day, he may not be the best of all of the names that are being permeated out here. Some more individuals alongside Larry Coker is going to be Gary Patterson and Chris Peterson. And, of course, this is being sparked partially because of the conversation to allow Mike Leach to get in. See, before this whole Mike Leach rule, you had to have an above 600 win record as a college coach. And Mike Leach is sitting at 596. So he's just below that 600 range, just below at 59+%. I think it's a good idea to allow Mike Leach to kind of bend the rules here a little bit, because when you look at some of the names, it's not always just about wins. Some of the names that have gotten in recently, not just always about wins. So I think you have to take other things in consideration. This previous season, they laid in Larry Blakeney from Troy University, 61.1% winning percentage, pretty impressive. Larry Corver got in as well. He won 2 NAIA national titles and had a 72% win percentage. Urban Meyer got in. Of course, collectively, he had an 85.4% winning percentage. He also was a national title winner at Florida and a national title winner at Ohio State. Absolutely makes sense. Nick Saban, almost 81% win percentage. Everybody knows what he did. Same thing, winning national titles at multiple schools, including a big chunk of those at one school in Alabama. And then whenever you look a little bit deeper, right, and you're thinking of this upcoming season, Gary Patterson should probably definitely get in, right? I think that makes the most amount of sense that Gary Patterson is part of that crew, is part of that club. I don't know if Larry Coker should be in, to be 100% realistic with you, but I do think that Gary Patterson absolutely should, and I also think Chris Peterson should as well. Funny enough, Mike Gundy has more wins than Chris Peterson. So then I kind of did some digging into the Big 12 side of the equation. And what are the Big 12 coaches that have all the most wins? Of course, Bob Stoops has 191 wins. Bill Snyder has 169 wins. So does Mike Gundy. Mike Gundy has 169 wins as well. Then you have to go to Mac Brown. Mac Brown has 158 W's. And then it's kind of, Max mixed bag from there. Matt Campbell's at 64 Big 12 W's. I think Dana Holgerson had some success, but not going to be enough. Mike Leach, 84 Big 12 W's. And of course, he did some other things, other places. So you have to take that in consideration. But Les Miles is now being brought into this equation. Les Miles finished right below a 60% win percentage. So he is not allowed to be in the list. But if they bump it down like they have to 595, then Les Miles does make the cut, even though he went 31 and 39 in the Big 12. So then I looked at some more. Gary Pinkel from Mizzou. He's in the Hall of Fame with 85 W's in the Big 12 and no conference titles to speak of. Nothing crazy to speak of. I mean, he wasn't running around killing it 24/7. Then Bill Snyder, obviously, same number of wins right now as Mike Gundy at 169. Revolutionized Kansas State, but they weren't winning a bunch of conference titles. They weren't competing for national titles. Frank Solich, Hall of Famer. Yes, he did have a 75% win percentage at Nebraska, but more or less a big chunk of why he's in the Hall of Fame is because of what he did at Ohio. He did great at Nebraska, but he did not win any Big 12 titles. Tommy Tuberville is also being listed as a potential individual to sneak in here in this year's class. Tommy Tuberville only had 20 Big 12 W's. I'm aware he had success other places as well, but nonetheless, whenever you look at the Big 12 coaches that are in the Hall of Fame, Mike Gundy is right there. And Kyle Whittingham, I think if you took all of his record before the Big 12, right, he is 2 wins shy of Mike Gundy. But I have said previously, I don't think Mike Gundy has enough Big 12 titles to get him into the Hall of Fame. But looking at some of the qualifications over the last couple seasons, it's not just about how many trophies you have. So I do think that he would help himself a ton if he were to get one more Big 12 title. I legitimately think that one more Big 12 title squashes all conversations. There's no way you can say that Mike Gundy's not a Hall of Famer without at least one more Big 12 title. But just go off the percentage. Used to be the 600 line is the cutoff. Mike Gundy's well ahead of that at like 658. So he's just under 66% win percentage. Kyle Whittingham's right there at the 66% winning range as well. Gary Patterson does have a handful, 20, not even 20 more W's than Mike Gundy. So Mike Gundy could easily pass Gary Patterson here quickly. Not to mention, not all of that was done in the Big 12. Also, not to mention, if we're going to give Bill Snyder credit, as he deserves, for everything they did at Kansas State, then you have to give the same thing for Mike Gundy at Oklahoma State, because we were not exactly a juggernaut of college football before he took over. We just got off of our worst year ever under his guidance. And I think even if you go back to his playing days, we never had anything close to seasons like this. So it is kind of cool to see Larry Coker be talked about in this light, because we only have 2 former Cowboy coaches that are named in the Hall of Fame, and that is Lynn Pappy Waldorf and, of course, Jimmy Johnson. So Mike Gundy is likely to be the number 3 head coach to be named to the Hall of Fame list. One more Big 12 title, I think, makes it a very, very quick conversation as far as first, second ballot style of debates. But from win percentage, he's in. From winning, he's in. From changing a program, he's in. From enhancing the university and the enrollment and all of the profitability, all of that he's in. Changing the landscape, changing the expectations, all of that equals Mike Gundy being in the Hall of Fame. So I think that whenever you look at some of the coaches that have gotten in recently and you compare that to Mike Gundy, then he's probably already a Hall of Famer. I mean, I know there's different areas of metrics, but when it comes to All-Americans and top 25 finishes and competing for Big 12 titles. Mike Gundy has all of that. If he wins another Big 12 title, right, there's nobody anywhere that can have anything negative to say about him getting into the Hall. If he strings together a few Big 12 titles, maybe a CFP appearance, maybe a national title appearance, because he did get robbed in 2011, right? That should never be forgotten. Mike Gundy could have a national title under his belt. He should have a national title appearance under his belt, but he got robbed from that. And I think that that is something he needs to get credit for. So I was always of the mind that he doesn't have enough Big 12 titles to get him into the Hall. But the more research you do, the more you realize that there's a good number of amazing individuals that are in the Hall of Fame that have 0 conference championships or maybe 1 conference championship, 0 national titles. A lot of them never even got close to playing for national titles. So numerically, he's there. Now, if he starts getting a few more Big 12 titles under his belt, then we could change the conversation on, is he a first ballot Hall of Famer or not? You could be a first ballot Hall of Famer with your pocketbook if you have FanDuel. The NBA action is allowing us all to enjoy what the Thunder is doing. Every night is going to deliver highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and, of course, cannot miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning buzzer beater or a breakout player that you know is about to do something big, there's never been a better time for you to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, same-game parlays, fans now have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. You've probably got a good read on who's heating up. If so, back it with some betting. $200 back in bonus bets could add to the excitement of your first $5 hauler. Head on over to FanDuel today. It's the perfect time to get set at FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. If it is a winner, you'll get $200 back in bonus bets. Make every moment matter more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Now, Steve Lutz has found another coach to be able to join his staff. He's also sent out some offers, including an international player. First of all, we got to talk about the hiring on the staff. I think this is a pretty good indication on what Steve Lutz is trying to do in the recruiting landscape, as Dana Valentine has become the Cowboy coach that joined Steve Lutz. The last couple of seasons, he's been at St. Bonaventure. They had back-to-back 20-win seasons, and this previous year, he was the coach that was out on the wings, helping them get to 23rd ranking nationally in scoring defense. Prior to that, he was one of the premier high school coaches in the country at Putnam Science Academy, where he put together a 77-3 record. Obviously, there's going to be some concern about making that jump from the high school to collegiate ranks, but he goes to St. Bonnie. They eventually or immediately put up 2 really good seasons, including a top 20 defensive performance this previous season. On top of that, connection that Coach Valentine has to Oklahoma State is he coached up former Cowboys Abu Osman and Arturo Dean. He also coached up new Cowboy Ben Ahmed, who decided to decommit from Miami to become an Oklahoma State Cowboy. I like the fact that Steve Lutz is not afraid to take a little bit of a risk here, a little bit of a gamble. And seeing as how this individual, Coach Valentine, has coached multiple players that have come to Oklahoma State and already been successful, I think that does give Steve Lutz the warm and fuzzies about what he could provide. Speaking of warm and fuzzies, we know that J.C. Hoyt has made an absolute killing going overseas, as Steve Lutz is trying to do the same. As we all know that coming in, Ben Ahmed is originally from another country, so that'll be a good pipeline if we can establish it. Now we offer Daniel Guetta, 6'2" guard from Israel. This previous season for Maccabi Ravat, he averaged 9.6 points a game, 2.9 rebounds a game, 4.7 assists a game while shooting a little over 35% from the three-point range. And when you watch the highlights, he looks like somebody who should average far more than 9.6 points a game. Very good dribble, very good individual about trying to find space. He seems to have a pretty solid shot. And it'll be a good deal to get some of this international stuff happening on the men's side of the game as well. On top of that, we've got a couple 4-stars also out east that now have offers, and guards Amir Jenkins and Aiden Derkak. But both of these individuals come from the Northeast. Amir Jenkins is out of Worcester Academy in Massachusetts. He's the number 94 overall player in the country, the number 11 point guard in the class, and the number 3 overall player from Massachusetts. Listed at 6'3", he averaged 14.1 points a game this previous season. He's had multiple 20-point-plus performances. This would be a big ordeal for us if we were to land his services over the likes of Boston College, Mississippi State, Maryland, Providence, and others. And then Aiden Derkak. Aiden Derkak is one of the top 3 players in the state of New Jersey. 6'5" combo guard. Is the number 52 player in the country in the 2026 cycle. He's also in the top 100 for on-3. He's currently considering Oklahoma State alongside Notre Dame, Miami, Villanova, Creighton, Rutgers, and others. He averaged 13.6 points a game, 5.7 rebounds, and 2.2 assists a game this previous season. He's another individual that can pop off because he averaged 24.7 points a game and 8.1 rebounds a game as a junior. He helped lead the Patriots to a 27-5 record. This is a pretty exciting time that Steve Lutz is not only finding some coaching pieces that he has some familiarity with. Obviously, this does have the loss of Arturo Dean hurt a little bit more, right? It would have been nice to see that defensive level individual link back up with his high school coach. But nonetheless, I like what we're doing, and I feel like this is partially involving some of these Northwest offers. Whenever you go out east and you're trying to snag some players, now this is not new. Mike Boynton was an East Coast guy. Steve Lutz has done very good thus far at recruiting that area of the country. But when you add Coach Valentine into the mix, that does carry a very, very big name in the high school realm. And you had so much defensive success with Arturo Dean. You had so much evolutionary success with Abu Usman. And now you get Ben Ahmed coming over from Miami after their coaching change, right? They let him out of his letter of intent. Now he's an Oklahoma State Cowboy. Now we have a connection to Coach Valentine, plus what he did at St. Bonaventure. I mean, St. Bonaventure is a pretty decent ball club, historically speaking. They are a team that typically makes a run at the NCAA tournament. Sometimes they make a run in the NCAA tournament. And his first year as an assistant coach in college, they have 20-plus Ws. His second year as an assistant coach in college, they have a top 20 defensive ball, a top 25 defensive ball club. So all things considered, that's important. Now you factor in the fact that we're going after more East Coast individuals. This must tie into that, right? I would imagine that not just is it a case of several former players or a couple former players and a current player that have played for that guy and been successful. Part of that conversational piece is likely what he was doing in recruiting at St. Bonaventure as well. So if he was getting in living rooms at St. Bonaventure that some people thought maybe he shouldn't be, that's going to pique some interest. Then you factor that in with the Arturo Dean, the Abu Usman, and the Ben Ahmed connections. This does make a whole lot of sense. Additionally, going after multiple 4-star shooters, I think this is an indication that Steve Lutz, given the right keys to the kingdom, can definitely make some things happen. I mean, this is somewhat of a rebuild year, again, to some degree, and that happens whenever you come in late and you kind of have to get guys acquired late. But he still turned it into a successful season. We got better. The X's and O's improved. We made the NIT tournament, and then we won some games in the NIT tournament, right? So it almost like we were playing with house money, much like Mike Gundy very well might be, probably should be, based off of those records. Josh Holliday might not be playing with house money, but there's likely going to be enough money in the house to make something happen, and we kind of need a big splash here. Mike Gundy could be a Hall of Famer because he's raised the expectations of Cowboy football to unprecedented levels. Josh Holliday is a little bit of a different story. Has he been a failure? No. Has it been slightly underwhelming? I would say that is a fair characterization. I mean, right when he comes in, he goes to Omaha. And then he wins a couple of Big 12 titles along the way. But when you look at, Jason Hurst just got called up. Rock Reggio's getting bumped up to a higher level of AA ball. Andrew Heaney still out there dealing. I mean, it's just kind of frustrating. See some of the dudes like Trevor Boone is still doing the darn thing. When you have some of these heavy hitters, Christian Encarnacion Strand, Jordy Mercer. Now, Jordy Mercer being back in the fold as a coach would be, obviously, it is a big deal. But in order for Josh Holliday to kind of get people off of his case, he's going to have to hit a home run with a pitching coach. No pun intended. Now, I know the Mississippi State coach has been floated as one of the top names to replace Rob Walton, but he's going to have a lot of suitors, especially, being an interim level coach at Mississippi State, a legendary program. If you could get somebody like that, that would foot the bill. That would make sense. But that's kind of why we're having this conversation. Former Cowboys, absolutely love them. Having Trey Cobb on staff, pretty cool. But we need to get back to Omaha, or at least a good representation in the Super Regionals. And that hasn't happened in a few years. And now, of course, we did win a Big 12 title, in there last season. So that cushions the blow a bit. But Josh Holliday needs to send a message here. And here's why I'm positive, is because Obrate is a major league facility. So from a recruiting perspective, there's not going to be very many coaches across the country that would not walk into Obrate and say, oh, yeah, I can recruit to this all day, every day, and twice on Sundays. That's huge. But the other X factor here is Chad Weiberg. Chad Weiberg proved he was up to the challenge with the hiring of David Taylor to replace the legend John Smith in wrestling. He proved that, Alan Bratton is still the guy to lead Cowboy golf, as we just won a national championship. He proved to be aggressive in hiring J.C. Hoyt. He proved to be aggressive in giving J.C. Hoyt an extension. He proved to be somewhat malleable over the Board of Regents thing that did ultimately push Mike Gundy to clean out the entire staff and essentially clean out most of the roster as well, which I think could be viewed as a positive. And as you're looking towards basketball, Steve Lutz is a pretty good hire. Steve Lutz has been coaching college basketball for 4 years. He sent 3 teams to the NCAA tournament, and he was pretty close to having us competitive enough to be near a tournament level team this previous season. And then, of course, had some fun in the NIT. But Josh Holliday needs to make a splash here. And I think Chad Weiberg should give him the ability to do so. Recruiting is not going to be a problem because of the facilities, because of the developmental metrics that we're allowed to show people, because of the success that we're having in the major leagues. All of that definitely adds up to a lot of things being in our benefit. And that is why we don't have to go with some random gym. Like we don't have to try to unearth a gym, a diamond in the rough. Go get a heavy hitter. Go get a Mississippi State level dude, because Obrate will attract that level talent. The difficulty is, of course, if you go after some of the big names that potentially would be available, you're competing against other head coaching opportunities. Maybe not at the same level, right? But if the Mississippi State pitching coach is not going to stay at Mississippi State, or they're not going to hire him as the head coach, then that means that there's going to be tons of Power 4 schools that want him to be their head coach. So it's going to take a lot for Josh Holliday in Oklahoma State to convince somebody like that. Don't go take a job at a Richmond. Don't go take a job at a North Texas. Don't take a job at a UTSA. Instead, come be the pitching coach at Oklahoma State. So it's not going to be easy, but thankfully, this is a sport where we historically have some things in our favor. We regionally, geographically, definitely have some things in our favor. The facilities work in our favor. So I don't think this should be a surprise if we get a big name guy. It will be a surprise if we get some, random dude that nobody's ever heard of, because we do have all of the ability to have the most biometric reading capable machines in that building if we don't already do. And maybe Rob Walton didn't like using some of that stuff. But the new coach seemingly is not going to have any difficulty recruiting, shouldn't have much difficulty in development. And if you figure out the mound management situation, we should be fine. Now you're seeing some names come in, some names go out, right, in this transfer portal era. I don't know how much stock you take into it quite just yet, but this needs to be another message sent by Chad Weiberg that we can go hire anybody for the most part, especially in a sport like baseball with O'Brate Stadium at our disposal. This doesn't need to be discovering unearthing of a diamond type situation. Go get a heavy hitter. This is Oklahoma State baseball. That stadium is going to allow you to allure a lot of individuals, I think coaches included. So let's go get one. All righty, y'all. So we're going to have this one right here. As always, I love you. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here in Locked On Oklahoma State. You could be anywhere. So happy you choose to be here. Do me a favor, hit the like button if you liked it, hit the dislike button if you didn't. That's okay too. More importantly, share, comment, and subscribe to my podcast. And people out there, you're the bricks, the bread, the butter, the fountain, the fondue, the funny stuff, the funky stuff. You're all of it. I appreciate you. Do what you do. Hit the stars. Leave a review. Later, my